Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Lee Jardine. I'm the Democratic Services Officer. For the purpose of this meeting, I'm also the host. I'll be assisting the committee with the use of technology to manage the process of the meeting. I won't have any control over the meeting and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the chair. Before we get proceedings underway, we'll start with some introductions, starting with the members. Councillor Coburn.
Good afternoon, Councillor Nikki Coburn.
Councillor Crouch.
Good afternoon, Councillor John Crouch.
Councillor Daniels.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alan Daniels.
Councillor Granger.
Good afternoon, Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Heaslip.
Afternoon, Councillor Michael Heaslip. I'll be chairing this meeting when we get going.
Councillor Greeny.
Hi, good afternoon, Councillor Ian Greeny.
Thank you. We also have Councillor Johnson in attendance.
Good afternoon, Councillor Johnson, Leader of the Council.
And just before we go into the officers, I'm just checking that Councillor McCarran Holmes has just joined us. Councillor McCarran Holmes, can you hear us? Yep, she's on the meeting. Okay, so we'll move on to the officers now. Nick Hardy.
Good afternoon, I'm Nick Hardy. I'm the Assistant Chief Executive for Policy, Performance and Economic Strategy.
Alex Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, Alex Fitzgerald, Policy Manager, Corporate Performance and Information.
Ian Hind.
Hello, I'm Ian Hind. I'm the Policy Officer for Scrutiny and Partnerships.
Kevin Kerrigan.
I'm Kevin Kerrigan, Program Director for Working.
Paul Taylor.
Good afternoon, Paul Taylor, Programme Manager for the Maryport area.
Thanks everyone for your introductions. I'll now hand you over to the chair to start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good afternoon, everyone, and everyone who's watching. We'll start the meeting with reviewing the minutes of the last meeting. Have I proposed that they are a correct record?
Move the minutes.
That's moved and seconded. Yes, that's seconded. I'll take it that they are approved unless anybody puts their hand up, waves at the camera, or otherwise indicates that they have a problem with any aspect of the minutes. No, I'll take them then as approved as a correct record. And I'm assuming that no one has any concerns or questions they want to raise now. Okay, next item is apologies for absence. Lee, what have we got?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies today from Councillors Annison, Bell, Hedworth, Horsley, Kirkbride and Scott. Councillor Coburn today is replacing Councillor Kirkbride. Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Coburn. Thank you. Looks like the absentees win. But anyway, any declarations of interest that aren't already on your formal declaration that anybody wants to raise in connection with anything on the agenda? No. Questions from the public? None received?
No, Chair, none received.
Items for public participation? No public participation.
Correct, Chair.
Not counting Councillor Johnson.
Correct, Chair.
Right. Okay, we'll get on to the meat of things then. Item 6, an update on the Workington and Maryport programmes and next steps. With the emphasis, I think, on next steps, please. Where are we? Where are we going with those two programmes? We've got Kevin Kerrigan, I believe he's talking about Workington. And I've lost him, Paul Taylor, there he is. Paul Taylor, who's going to be talking about Maryport. Who's going first? I'm not bothered which one of you goes first.
Sorry, I'll start, Chair, with Workington.
Go on, Kevin, thank you.
Excuse me. So just as members will be aware that as part of the town deal process, we submitted the Workington Town Investment Plan to government on the 30th of October 2020. And Workington was one of 45 towns who were made a heads of terms offer of a town deal on the budget on the 3rd of March of this year. So agreement to the heads of terms, which were not contractually binding and will act as a memorandum of understanding, was required to be returned to government by the 24th of March of this year. So those heads of terms have been agreed by the Town Deal Board and the Council through a delegated leader decision, and the signed heads of terms were returned to government on the 23rd of March. So in terms of the heads of terms offer, we've been offered funding of up to £23.1 million, with 5 of the 6 priority projects which were proposed in the town investment plan identified as being within scope for the town's fund. So for reference, those projects are the Port of Workington and the work towards creating a logistics and energy hub, the Workington Innovation Centre and Entrepreneurship Programme, the Town Centre Townscape and Connectivity Improvements Project, the Sports Village, and the Workington Digital Accelerator Programme. So in terms of the next steps, it will be necessary to prioritise these projects within the funding envelope that was offered by the Town Deal, because the funding offer is slightly less, 1.65 million, than the initial ask for those projects. It's probably worth mentioning the one project that from the town investment plan that wasn't included within the offer, and that was the proposals for a temporary use on the site of the former Opera House in Workington. However, whilst that wasn't supported within the main Towns Fund deal, members will be aware that we have taken advantage of a £750,000 accelerated funding award provided through the Towns Fund, which has enabled us to enter into an agreement to acquire that site, which will be acquired in a cleared form, and contractors are currently on site in relation to the demolition. The site will be fenced and surfaced, and we're looking for to put some mature trees in pots on the site to provide a bit of interest and greenery within the town centre. And we're continuing to explore opportunities to bring forward temporary uses for the site outside the town deal. And just to remind members, the remainder of the accelerated funding was being used to support the development of outdoor events space, an outdoor gym adjacent to the leisure centre, and for public realm improvements to the Central Way underpass and cycleway. And if any members have been in the area recently, they'll be aware that the outdoor gym equipment is now in place, and we're expecting the safety surfacing to be completed next week, and that work is ongoing with the underpass. So in terms of the next steps, so within the next 2 months, we are required to provide confirmation to MHCLG in 3 areas. One of those is the details of the project to be taken forward following the prioritisation exercise I mentioned earlier, a financial profile for the town deal, which will include capital revenue split and match funding, and a plan for addressing key conditions relating to the project and the town investment plan that is set out in the heads of terms. So those conditions include the provision of further information on delivery, and in particular match funding, project risks, future engagement plan, and public sector equalities duties assessment. And then within 12 months, we are required to complete business cases for the projects being taken forward and submit a town deal summary document summarising how the business case has been appraised, how project conditions are being met, a delivery plan, and a monitoring and evaluation plan. So in terms of that approval process, the council is the accountable body for the town deal, and business cases are to follow the council's usual assurance processes, which would be undertaken in conjunction with the town deal board, who members may act as an advisory role to the council, with the approval of the business cases being an executive decision. So just in summary wise, I think it's absolutely great news that we got the funding of 23.1 million, it's clear that this is not the end of the process, and there is quite a lot of work to do over the next 12 months to be able to develop the business cases, access that funding, and then getting on to delivering the project.
Thank you, Kevin. Before I invite members to put any questions or make any comments they have, could I just ask you what a digital accelerator is?
Yes, Councillor. So it's basically proposing the acquisition of some high-end computing equipment that we would work with educational establishments and employers in the area to allow people to develop digital skills. So, primarily focused at sort of advanced manufacturing, digitalization, that sort of range of skills.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, members, any comments or questions? Councillor McCarran Holmes was first with a hand up, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. I read with interest, and I should say I listened with interest to the presentation about where we're going and how quickly we're going. And can I ask, at what point in our calendar does this committee commence its monitoring and evaluation that was mentioned?
So, yes, Councillor, so the monitoring and evaluation, as part of the development of business cases over the next 12 months, we are required to develop a monitoring and evaluation plan for each of those projects, and the monitoring and evaluation of those projects would commence following project completion. So, clearly, as I said, we are the accountable body, and the processes follow our normal governance procedures in terms of project approval, etc. So, this committee's role within the Constitution would be as with any other project that the council is progressing.
Do you want to come back on that, Carney?
Yes, I do. In your forward plan as chairman of the committee, where will this feature?
Well, I can't say exactly where yet, but it will feature somewhere. Well, perhaps we could look at that when we come to forward plan on the on item 11 on the agenda, because of course by the time we've after the April, by the time we meet in May or whenever we meet after the annual general meeting, we'll be producing a new forward plan for the next council year. Or I say we, but it'll be whoever are the members of the committee after the annual general meeting, after the annual meeting of the council. So yes, it's noted, Carney. Thanks very much. We've noted that it needs to be in the forward plan somewhere. We'll have to discuss exactly where it fits. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put on record our thanks to Mr. Kevin Kerrigan and the Workington team, and Mr. Paul Taylor for the Workington Group for all their hard work to establish the funding for Workington and Maryport. I hope it will be well received and used in the near future.
Thank you, Malcolm. Any other comments or questions from members? Can I just hang on? Yes, Councillor Greeny.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Kevin. Useful information. I just have one query with it with regards, and I think it's more about project management and how we're actually going to manage these projects. One of the major projects identified is the sports village, and obviously up until last year, the thinking was that that was going to be led and project managed by Allerdale, and through subsequent meetings, that's kind of been flipped on its head in terms of it's going to now be led by the actual two main sporting clubs and with our support. How do we see that being run and managed in terms of that project fund? Will that money be given to the actual sports club to manage it, or will we be actually managing it, or will be a third party coming in acting as an interim? to actually make that happen?
Okay, Councillor. So the intention remains that the project itself will be led by the clubs with support from the council. So they will be taking the lead in the development of that business case. But that business case will have to be assured through the council's own governance procedures. So the council will have a direct role in the approval and assurance of the business case. So with all of these projects, the council may not necessarily be the lead for moving the project forward. So, for example, in relation to the public realm project, most of that will affect highway land. So, we'll be having a discussion with the county council as to who leads on moving that project forward. But in all cases, it will be this council that is responsible for the assurance and the approval of those business cases.
I think where I'm coming from is that accountability in terms of project management, and who is responsible for actually pushing that forward in terms of the project. I think the concern is that if we get into a situation, a bit of ambiguity, where people aren't fully aware or fully conscious who is actually in control of the actual project. And I think that just needs a bit of definition behind it, so everybody understands exactly who controls what within the project.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, as part of the business case, has made it clear there needs to be a delivery plan.
Yeah.
So that will be set out in the business case. But I think the comment, I'd go back to the point that ultimately it's this council as the accountable body and who is responsible for the delivery of this programme. So we need to be sure as a council that we have robust project management and governance procedures in place, irrespective of who is delivering those individual projects, to ensure the overall programme is delivered.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Cheers.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Kevin. I take that means in a nutshell that while the two clubs might be developing the ideas and looking for partners to develop with, at the end of the day, no money leaves Allerdale Council's coffers without the council's approval as to what it's going to be spent on. So we ultimately, the council has the is the financial controller as far as to that extent anyway. One other question which I'll ask you, if I can, while we've got you. There is mention throughout the document of public engagement, and I understand there'll be each of the main projects within the Town Deal programme will have its own project board, so to speak, which will be taking it forward. Is it down to those project boards to do the appropriate public engagement about their proposals, or you don't know, as a package, or what? How do the public engagement arrangements work?
Yeah, again, Councillor, that's something that we'll work out through the development of the business cases and the delivery and implementation plans. But it's also something that the Town Deal Board will have a view on an approach. So the Town Deal Board will have a role as part of our own processes, and we're integrating the role of the Town Board into our own approval processes for the project. So I envisage that the Town Deal Board will provide that overview and ensure we've got a coordinated approach to consultation. But that consultation, I suspect, was likely to take place in relation to the individual projects at the appropriate time, depending on the stage of the development they move forward. But as I say, the Town Deal Board will have a role ensuring that that's coordinated.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We await developments then with interest, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sure we'll see you again. But thanks for your presence this afternoon. So can we go into Maryport now, and can I invite Paul Taylor to give us an update on the programme and outline the next steps in Maryport, please?
Yes, by all means. Good afternoon. So really just to sort of recap, most of these issues people will be already aware of, but following on from the ARUP study a couple of years ago, and the subsequent Maryport delivery plan, we submitted expressions of interest to Government Future High Street Department and Historic England for funding, and we were successful with both of those bids. So we actually submitted the larger bid for Future High Street back in July 2020, and we were advised of the outcome on Boxing Day, that we'd been successful with 2/3 of the funding. So that came to around 11.5 million. We'd also been advised months earlier than that, we'd been successful with 600,000 funding from Historic England. So in effect, in a small town like Maryport, that will make a significant difference. In terms of how we determined what interventions we would be undertaking, we had a very short opportunity to consult, but we put together a project group made up of various different councillors and other stakeholders. We were involved with quite a number of the councillors that sort of came up with initial ideas, and we went out to consultation back in the early part of last year, and we got feedback on all of the potential interventions that we were wanting to undertake. So when we found out on Boxing Day of last year that we were successful with the Future High Street proposals, the next step was to actually scale down from the initial bid of 16.5 million to come up with a good plan for the offer of 11.5 million. So in principle, we went back to our advisory group, which is a principal group that we're working with that has had overall influence over the next steps. That group is made up again of key stakeholders, including local councillors, local MP, local groups. And they approved in principle our ideas for going forward with the key interventions. So the interventions that we are proceeding with are not that different to the ones we were going for initially with a 16.5 million bid. We are going ahead with the majority of what we wanted to go for. However, the public realm element of what we were proposing, we've scaled down that considerably because we believe that we were not going to get quite as good value for money through the public realm proposal that we were going for. So we prioritise, and we're going for 6 key interventions, those being the conversion of the former Carlton Cinema to provide a community hub, a development which is made up of a series of empty buildings at the top of the town centre that our consultants have referred to as Empire Yard, which is around the old Empire Theatre. We're also looking to develop convert the Wave Leisure Centre to provide a leisure pool and an e-bike hub. We're also looking to convert the Christchurch building into a museum and potentially a gallery. The public realm proposals do include improvements to car parking, to Senhouse Street, as opposed to the main trunk road, Curzon Street, into the town. And we're also proposing to provide grant schemes to owners of buildings that are empty to convert those empty buildings into residential schemes. So basically, we're just waiting to get final approval on the proposals, and we are told that it's unlikely that we will be refused to proceed to the next stage with that. So we're just waiting for the final offer letter, which is overdue by about a month. But I understand the government must be very busy with a lot of other things at the moment. So we're just waiting any time now to get that final approval before we start going through the procurement process. So in terms of the next stages, we are embarking on working with two key stakeholder groups. One will focus on engagement and one on delivery. So we've had a number of stages in terms of the consultation phases. We've had a number of events in the town just before the first lockdown. Very fortunately, we were able to proceed with those prior to lockdown, and quite a lot of information that's gone out in the way of online information to the local community, and a lot of feedback through online, through our website. And we've actually got quite a lot of buy-in to what we want to do from the local community. That will continue during the 3 years of the programme. However, we want to start to see something happening now. So we're just waiting for that final confirmation, as I say, from government to proceed with the procurement stages. The other thing that's kind of moved on quite recently is approval from Exec on purchasing the buildings. So we've got approval to purchase the former Carlton Cinema. We've got an options agreement on that, which we are securing that building on the basis of the valuation. We're also we're going through with a purchase for the Christchurch in Maryport. So that will soon be secured by the council, which will enable us to start the work on that building. So the only other buildings that we would want to purchase are around the old Empire Theatre. We think that'll take a little bit longer to go through because there are the ownership is a number of different people own buildings around that area, and the piece of wasteland in that vicinity. So we're really all set to go now. And there's the first meeting of the engagement group on Tuesday. The agendas have gone out, and we are looking forward to meeting with a variety of stakeholders within the town to discuss the plans to develop each one of these proposals in more detail. So happy to answer any questions if people have questions.
Thanks, Paul. Members want to ask questions, could they please wave or put their hands up? But can I ask one? I'm picking up from what you said that that this council will be firmly in the lead in delivering on all of these projects. Is that right? There isn't that element like there is in Workington, where some of it's being done by the county council or other partners. These are all very firmly Allerdale Council projects.
Okay, so all with the exception of the scaled down public realm. The scaled down public realm proposal will be led by the county, however, with our steer, if you like. So, we are kind of working with the county, but they will lead on the actual physical work and planning the project. But apart from that, everything else, yes, on both the Has and Future High Street will be led by Allerdale.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you for your presentation. Councillor McCann-Holmes. Hello, Carney.
Sorry, Chairman, I do forget that. The funding given goes some way to what is so desperately needed to regenerate the retail sector and to retain the shoppers and to encourage visitors to the town. Maryport displays a distinct, one way I can describe it is come to aspect, which we need to harness that and we need to drive that forward with the money that is available. There are other pots of funding that Paul and I have discussed that we're looking forward to putting applications in from a matched aspect. So I'm quite pleased with that, although the whole of the money I would have liked to seen.
Thanks, Carney. Councillor Coburn.
Yes. Now, I could be misinformed here, but I thought the Wave had been given either money for or had a lot of e-bikes already. So if that's the case, wouldn't that be a quick win situation for creating a hub, an e-bike hub, as you mentioned?
Yes, the initial proposal for an e-bike hub really came about because of the focus on leisure and amenities in the town, and I suppose quite timely as well, because I understand partly as a result of lockdown, and the only way that people can go out now is sort of to take their exercise time. It is, you know, it's been quite fortuitous in terms of timing in that respect, that there's a real resurgence of interest in cycling. And so the view was that that particular intervention was going to work well. The site the Wave provides is quite a decent sized space outside of the building. So the idea is that we would work with the footprint of the building to develop the e-bike hub, which will provide not just e-bikes, but bikes for hire as well from that location. It's early days, and on each one of these interventions, there will be further dialogue with local stakeholders about developing these plans. We have a initial business plan in place. We know we can make it stack up, but we do have to be aware of things like security and ensuring that you know, we manage the service that we want to provide effectively. However, I don't know. I think there was discussions, or there has been initiatives in the past in Maryport, but there are no e-bikes in place right now, to my knowledge. So we would have to actually start from scratch with the purchase of the bikes, which we can do. And we've already had discussions with various different organisations in the county that provide e-bikes for hire. So, you know, we've got an idea of the kind of thing we need to do to get that process up and running. Sorry, it's my doorbell. I think there's a parcel. Can I possibly just get that parcel? Otherwise I won't retrieve.
You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you. Can we just pause while Paul looks after his dog?
It's sorry. It's what working from home. This is what happens, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
The post delivers, and then you end up, because it's a parcel. So I had to retrieve it. You know, otherwise it would have probably disappeared somewhere. Apologies for that.
Yeah, don't worry. It's I mean, dogs know that usually if they're back at the postman, he goes away. So yeah, it's a success. But when it's a parcel, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Go on, Councillor Greeny.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to say to Paul, you know, thank you to him and his team, you know, for all the hard work they've put in and basically the success they've achieved in terms of, you know, gaining that funding. And I think it's just a credit to them and their enthusiasm really and the effort that they've put into my report. So I really just like to set off by, thanking Paul personally for that. I think it's been a great fit by the team.
Really, thank you for
that. Alongside the town council, the town fund, which we've been very successful with, part of the delivery plan, we talk about the actual waterfront scheme that we're looking at as well, Paul, which is further into the future.
Yeah.
And obviously that is outside of the town fund. And I think this is more about going forward in terms of how we intend to carry that forward for future funding. Is there scope there in terms of where we can actually apply to and actually generate that income to support that waterfront scheme? Or are we looking at possible private partnerships for some areas that we could actually possibly develop rather than just relying on the grant scheme arrangements? I was wondering if you could enlighten me in terms of how we intend to actually look at that as well as deliver the town fund, given there's a lot of work involved with that as well. So you're now working on basically two fronts, so to speak. You're looking at funding for the actual waterfront scheme as well as project delivery for the town fund scheme. So, there's going to be even more work coming your way in reality. So I'm just wondering how you're actually going to manage that, how you're going to carry that forward.
Absolutely, and I acknowledge everything you said there, Councillor Green, here, and agree. There is a huge volume of work potentially to be undertaken. As you know, we managed to fund a feasibility study for the waterfront areas, and we have some concept plans in place now for the promenade and the harbour side, from housing to sort of various leisure and amenity facilities that we can develop there. We are fortunate as a council in that we've got that ownership of a strip of land alongside the promenade, as well as a building there, the former toilets that could quite easily lend itself to being converted into a useful building. So as you well know, we have had a series of meetings with local stakeholders to get to that point where we've got good, sort of fairly robust initial concept plans in place, and some initial ideas of how we would make things work from a financial business plan perspective if we proceed with some of those amenity plans. However, you're absolutely right. At the moment, that whilst there are a number of potential funding opportunities that Councillor Carney McAdam Holmes referred to earlier on, we actually we haven't yet got any funding to proceed with those things yet. But we actually think that there are a number of potential funding opportunities going forward that may lend themselves to funding improvements within the waterfront area. So we could start with some of the key infrastructure elements, such as improvement around the promenade itself, which there are areas that are not safe that maybe could do with improving, before going on to some of the more comprehensive development plans that we've got for that area. So our plan is to focus on the funding opportunities for the waterfront areas, and myself and my colleagues very much aware that that is the next steps. So one of the things that we're doing is the new engagement group that is being set up will look to the priorities for the town going forward, above and beyond the high street, because obviously the priority has to be to get those footfall figures up. But beyond that, we very much recognise the waterfront area is one which can help us get those footfall figures up. So if we get more visitors to the area, then clearly that's going to have a really beneficial effect in terms of, some of the businesses alongside Senhouse Street and Curzon Street, and it will bring tourism into the area, which is our ultimate aim. So yes, it is the next stage. I don't have the answer yet, but certainly it is something that we will need to focus on now in terms of trying to get funding and resources. So, staffing wise, we're looking at ways in which we can actually improve resources internally to support getting that work done, to get the money in order to do the work that needs to be done.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Paul. Very, very good. Nice to see. I've always thought that Maryport has been an underutilised town that has got some really distinctive features about it, and could be a definite tourist trap. You could put a nice restaurant on the seafront, on the promenade, and sell fish or something like that. But anyway, my question, couple of questions, is with the e-bike hub, is that going to be run by the council, or are we going to bring in a business partner, somebody who's actually already runs an e-bike shop?
Okay.
Okay, if I answer that, and I'll ask you my next question.
Sorry. Yes, I mean, you're certainly right with regard to the first point. I referred to the building on the promenade, the former toilets, that could well be converted to become usable resource for the town. It could well sell wet fish or fish and chips or ice creams or that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely acknowledge that, and we are trying to find ways in which we can fund that. Because the services that are already in there, the water supply, electric and everything else. So it's not as complex a task as starting from scratch with a new development. Certainly in terms of the e-bike hub, yes, we do actually need to investigate further how we develop the business plan beyond the initial ideas. We have at the moment GLL, the contract at the Maryport Wave, and we also have working with the local swimming pool group in terms of developing a leisure pool in that area. In terms of management, we do have some initial plans for that, but at the moment they're only initial plans. So we've set up what we call a delivery group. So we've got these two project groups, the engagement group and the delivery group, and Steve Holland, who now works for Beck and will be working very closely with us over the forthcoming months, will be focusing on getting those plans to the point where we are able to deliver and we know how it's going to be managed going forward. It's a little bit early for me to commit to how that's going to happen at this point, but he will be working with that delivery group to refine the business plan so that we know exactly how it's going to be managed, either in-house or through a contract and a partnership. And as I say, we will keep you informed as time progresses as how that will work. But it's a good question.
Thank you, Paul.
You want to come back, Councillor Daniels?
Yeah.
You want to ask another question?
Yeah. With regard to Christchurch and turning into a museum, art gallery, I'm sure there's potential also to make some money by having a little cafe or some kind of food outlet. And now the people, when they go to art galleries, always like to have a cup of tea and a cake and what have you. So is that in your plans as well?
Not necessarily for Christchurch, but for the Carlton hub, community hub, that was going to be a big feature within the Carlton. So there are a number of kind of refreshment outlets on Senhouse Street. So we need to be aware of not kind of overloading the area too much. However, I accept your point. The size and the scope of the building is such that it does lend itself to a number of potential uses. Now, initially, we'd sort of thought about developing an art gallery in that building, but through the HAS funding, what we're planning to do is convert the museum, the Maritime Museum, into an art gallery. And we have a number of interested parties that would be interested in displaying their personal collections in within that building. So there's huge scope for the Maritime Museum to be converted into a gallery. We will have funding in order to do that. But in terms of Christchurch, the focus will be a museum. And as I understand it, many of the artifacts that we've got already within the town, we're not able to actually display them because there isn't the space that there is. So Christchurch will be converted to provide a mezzanine level, and that will include like a viewing platform, so you can look out over the sea. So maybe we could look at a small cafe or something of that nature as well. These are concept plans that have been approved. However, there is still an opportunity to tweak these plans to develop, over time to provide what is needed within the town. But yes, a cafeteria within the Carlton Community Hub would certainly be something that we want to develop. We will create a small outside space there from the demolition of number 28, if that's approved. That would then provide a nice outdoor seating area which is sheltered from the winds and the bad weather. So we think that would work really well within the town because there are not that many outdoor seating areas.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We need to move on, I think. Thank you to Kevin Kerrigan and to Paul Taylor for giving us the update on the Mayor report and working in positions and next steps. I propose we receive those reports and note that we'll be getting further reports on Workington and Mayor report progress through the course of our next council year, which will need a timetable. So if that's agreed, we'll go on to the next item, which is local government reorganisation. The council's response to the government consultation. As you know, the council submitted a proposal which the government is now consulting on, and the issue is what response do we make now to the government's consultation on our original proposal. So Councillor Johnson, the leader of the council's here to give us an update on the latest decision making by executive, which I think was on Wednesday, and see where we go from here. Councillor Johnson, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for inviting me here today. What is it in particular you're looking for from me today, Chair?
Well, if you could just explain to the committee members, basically the proposals that were agreed by executive on Wednesday in terms of the next steps. I mean, this isn't a calling as such, but obviously we're looking into the background of the decision and hoping, I suppose, to be able to contribute to whatever emerges from the process that you set in train on Wednesday, if you would, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Johnson.
Mr. Chairman,
I'll pass over to Nick. Nick can run through the details if that's okay, Chair, and then I'll be happy to take any questions from there.
That's fine. Hello, Nick. Welcome. Please give us the latest.
Thanks, Chairman. If I just set a bit of context first in terms of just giving people a quick reminder of the process and just what the current position is, and then maybe if I just touch on the decision-making timeline, if that's all right. So I think people will remember that the councils in Cumbria asked the Minister to consider a process for unitary authorities in Cumbria. And on the 9th of October last year, we received a letter from the government asking us to submit proposals for local government reorganisation in the county. And of course, it's ingrained in my memory, but we had them till the 9th of December to work up that case for a proposal. Of course, all the other councils in Cumbria were also given the same task, and it resulted in 4 proposals from the county being submitted to government for consideration in terms of LGR. So they were a single unitary covering the whole of Cumbria from the county council. There was a proposal for a north-south split, which for us sees Allerdale, Carlisle and Eden paired together, and that went forward from Carlisle City Council and Eden Council. We had an east-west split, which was, of course, our preferred position, which saw Allerdale go with Copeland and Carlisle. And then there was a submission made by Barrow and South Lakes, which is for Cumbria and Morecambe Bay. So those proposals were considered by the Secretary of State, and last month on the 22nd of February, the formal consultation process was launched. And that consultation process runs until the middle of next month, the 19th of April. And the government have decided to take the decision to consult on all 4 of the proposals that were forthcoming from the county. So as part of the process then, the government is now seeking views from any interested person, including residents, and all of the councils that are touched upon by these proposals in the area. And they're also specifically consulting any other named consultees. So I think things like the police and crime commissioners, health authorities, etc. The council have been asked to encourage responses to the consultation, but we're not allowed to use our resources to promote a specific option. So we're not allowed to campaign on a specific proposal. So in terms of what we're doing at the moment then, so we are actively encouraging local stakeholders to respond to the consultation. As in line with the guidance, we've got links to all of the 4 options on our website, as have all the other councils. And senior politicians like Mike have been invited along to various different meetings to furnish stakeholders with further information on the proposals that we submitted. So at the moment, myself and 1 or 2 others, including Alex, are busy trying to pull together the kind of the bones of a submission, looking at the various different aspects of each of the bids, in order to then have a draft response prepared on behalf of the council by the 1st of April. So the process is that this is again a decision to be made by the leader of the council on the 1st of April. And the reason for the 1st of April is that then allows for our decision-making processes to be followed. So, for example, to allow for a potential calling of that decision. After the 19th of April, the Secretary of State will then consider all the responses made by Cumbria, and at that point, the Minister will make a decision on the future of local government in Cumbria. Just in terms of our own internal consultation timeline, so similar to what happened last time, we've set up a local government reorganisation cross-party working group, and they met last week, and they will meet again next month. And we obviously have this today to inform members as to the process and to take any views that members have. And then probably more importantly, we've got the all-member workshop on the 29th of March, so next Monday, where we can run through the options in a bit more detail and get some more detailed feedback from members. So that's the position that we're in at the moment. So we've started, as I said, to draft out a consultation response, and I'm quite happy, as I assume Councillor Johnson is, to listen to any comments that members would care to make on the process, or on any specific comments that members would care to make on any proposals today.
Thank you, Nick, for that exposition of where we are. I'm just checking, first of all, have all members got the workshop on the 29th of March in their diaries? Could you just check and make sure that you have? So are there any questions to either Nick or to Mike Johnson on the process that's been outlined to us? I think what we're looking for is for members to be satisfied that the process that's been outlined is sufficiently inclusive to allow all members and indeed all our citizens and other organisations to have their say if they wish to. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick, what would be the preferred option for Allerdale? Because there's one or two permutations there you've thrown at us. So which would be the preferred route for Allerdale to go down, please?
Maybe one for Councillor Johnson to pick up.
I think it would be fair, because we're not supposed to use council resources now in this time of purdah. Malcolm, it's the Allerdale, Copeland and Carlisle unitary, along with Eden, South Lakes and Barrow unitary, with a combined authority and a directly elected mayor. That's the submission that we made jointly with Copeland.
So an elected mayor comes with those three, that proposal?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, Nick.
But that's an elected mayor for Cumbria, not necessarily an elected mayor for the two unitaries.
No,
separately.
Absolutely. It would be an elected mayor of the combined authority.
Yeah. What the new authority would do, the new unit authority would do in terms of having an elected mayor would be, I suppose, the same as it and any other council can do. They can decide to have one or not have one as they wish.
Absolutely. And the reason we've gone for that option for everybody's benefit is that if we have a directly elected mayor, it opens up a whole new funding stream available to us. Government want to make deals with mayors, so they've set aside billions of pounds in additional funding to support mayors in delivering those ambitions that they have in the counties that they represent. So there is devolution deals available if you don't have an elected mayor. However, they're not as enhanced as what they would be if you had a directly elected mayor.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Councillor Granger, Councillor Johnson. Any other questions or comments or points? Councillor Graney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just touching on something that Nick said there about the government will decide the preferred option. If they come back with that preferred option and it isn't amenable to several councils, will it be forced upon the actual councils within Cumbria, or will we have the right to actually withdraw from that?
If I pick that one up, to the best of my knowledge, there's no power of veto for any of the local authorities involved in the process. It'll be a ministerial decision, and once the minister has made that decision, then it'll be straight into the implementation process.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, add to that. One thing to try and assure or reassure members is that all 6 MPs of Cumbria are in agreement that they don't support a single unitary. And all 6 district leaders have also written to the Secretary of State and ministers to say that they don't agree with a single unitary for Cumbria. So at worst for us, we don't get what we would want. And then we're left with one of the other two unitary submissions to have thrust upon us. But clearly it's down to us to make the best representation that we can, and also for ask as many people and businesses to participate in the consultation to support our submission.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Granger.
Just to follow on to that, what Mike's just been saying there. So is it, correct us if I'm wrong here, but is it just the county council that want to go for a single unitary body? All the other 3-4 councils want to integrate, and it's the county council that's saying one body.
Yeah, that's correct, Malcolm. It's only the county council that support the single unitary. So basically their submission would be, in essence, to dissolve the districts as we know them now and continue then operating as one unitary authority over the whole area of Cumbria.
Cheers, thank you.
But also in their submission that they're not going for a directly elected mayor. So that devolution deal wouldn't be as favourable as what it would be if we go for one of the other unitary submissions.
Well, as you said before, Mike, there is benefits for having a mayor, an elected mayor, like just a funding benefit.
Absolutely, and you're talking probably an additional £3 billion that's available to directly elected mayors that wouldn't be available to a normal council.
It's a lot of money.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Is there anybody else, or are we content? Will the minutes show that we are content with the process that Mike Johnson, Nick Hardy have outlined, and that we will be encouraging members to take part in the member workshop and to encourage as many other people that we represent to take part in this process as well? Is that okay? Is that agreed? Right, thank you. Thank you, Mike Johnson, for taking the time to join us. Don't feel you have to sit in for the rest of the afternoon. I'm sure you've got things to do. And the same with Nick or Paul and Kevin. If you've got things to do, please, please, if you feel you need to go and do them, please do so.
Thanks, Chair. And with that said, I'll happily leave you to get on with the rest of your meeting, as I've got lots of other things I can get on with. So thank you very much.
I thought you might. Thank you, Mike.
Bye.
Okay. Right. Item 8, future development of overview and scrutiny. 8A, liaison with audit committee. Unfortunately, can I just report from the chair that we've begun the process of liaison with audit committee, but we have not had another liaison meeting between chair, vice chair of audit and the co-chairs of this committee since we last reported to you a month ago. However, we have an understanding, we have some arrangements in place. We'll be developing that, and clarity will no doubt emerge as we go forward as to what's the role of audit and what's the role of overview and scrutiny, looking on the same objects through different windows and different perspectives. But that I think will become clearer. The first manifestation of that, I think, is that audit committee have agreed that they will be picking up the outcome of the procurement review work that the Task and Finish group did and that Ian Green reported to executive, to make sure that executive actually are picking up on and implementing the recommendations that they said they accepted. But yeah, we need to make sure that they actually do accept them, an audit committee will pick up that role, particularly because in audit terms, it is a risk to governance and a risk to the financial stability of the authority if we don't have appropriate procurement and project management arrangements in place. So they'll be doing that. The second part of this item is new advice from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which you might find interesting. I hope everyone's read it. It's not a question of telling people thou shalt do this or thou shalt do that, but I think it just puts a helpful framework around the work that both Overview and Scrutiny does and Audit Committee does, and in fact the work that other people, officers and members of the council do, so you can see how the whole thing should fit together. And it's as ever, it's not so much about structures and processes. It's about cultures and behaviours and the way you work and the way you look at things. You can put frameworks and structures in place, but if people aren't working them effectively, then they're useless. So would members please have a look at that? And it's maybe something we'll need to come back to after the annual meeting of the council, when we might have new members of the Scrutiny Committee. It might be appropriate then to do a workshop for new members, looking both at our forward plan for next year and at the new ways in which scrutiny and audit relationships in councils are evolving. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of folk don't know, but I'm chair of the members' development, and I'll have a crack with Gail about it, but I better crack with Ian about it. I would like this paper distributed to all members, and I'll go to Gail later on to see if through the members' development that this sort of paperwork can go out to every member on the council.
Thank you, Malcolm. I think it'd be useful maybe if members' development group would look at what development workshops that members might need to pick up on this stuff and other stuff coming out of the Centre for Governance and
I think it would be a benefit, Michael.
Scrutiny as we go into the new council year. Are there any other comments or questions anyone wants to make on how we take this issue forward? No, okay. We'll park that as work in progress. No doubt we'll come back to it, and we'll go on to the next item, which is the update report from response to the pandemic task and finish group. This isn't in the form of a written report to members yet, because we're still mulling over, the members of that group are still mulling over and developing our responses to the issues that have arisen. Just to briefly recap, we've looked at the impact of the pandemic on families. We looked at the impact on poverty. We looked at children, communities, and more recently we've turned to looking at the impact of the pandemic on the council itself. And I think there's a recognition that even if we all get vaccinated and even if all the restrictions lifted on the 21st of June or thereafter, and even if your COVID disappeared, which I'm afraid it's probably not going to, it's going to be with us for some time, that to go back to just operating exactly as we were beforehand would have been to waste a good crisis, and you should never do that. So we're looking at in discussions with the chief exec and others about how the model, the operating model for the council needs to change. I mean, there are a number of issues which are kicking about. One is surprisingly, perhaps, with people working at home, I know the Chief Executive's impression is that the productivity of the council through flexible working hasn't been adversely affected. But on the other hand, there are a number of issues where you need to be aware of if you're looking at people working from home, because you don't develop the same kind of team spirit. You've always got a problem about how you induct new people into an organisation when they only ever see other people on Zoom calls. We need to be more, I think, focused on being able to deal with people's problems and issues at the point at which they contact us. So more and more stuff being done in the front office rather than the back office, so that people who are dealing directly with the public aren't just receptionists, so to speak, but they're actually problem solvers, and that will require an amount of staff development to be able to do that, and a strengths-based approach to staff development as well. Also, recognition that what we've learned from this pandemic is that nationally, not just locally by any means, nationally we'd forgotten the importance of public health and the importance of district councils, or their successors as unitary councils, in the whole field of public health, which has sort of been around so long that we've kind of taken it for granted. And public health covers a multitude of things. Not just what we think of as vaccinations or whatever, but all the things that councils were first set up to do, like the quality of our housing, space standards, which I know members of the planning development panel have been concerned about in new housing, sport and leisure for everyone, to enable people to be fit and resilient and able to respond. And a lot of that has been picked up in the resilience strategy that officers have produced, and which we've considered, and this committee had a considerable role in developing. But we're not out of the woods yet, and two, there's some way to go in our understanding of exactly how we need to respond as a council. So this is an issue that isn't going to be, get together in a couple of weeks' time, write a report, there it is. This is something that's going to involve probably over the next 12 months as we creep slowly out of where we are now into where the hell we might be in 12 months' time. So that's I think a summary. We will be providing you with an update report once we've been able to consider thoughts more cogently, and the issue will come back. But that's just a brief update on where we've got to so far with that one. Councillor McCann-Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman. There has been an awful lot of work undertaken at the moment, and there is an awful lot of work to be undertaken. I would like to see that at some point that we talk about the National Institute for Health Protection, which should have come out in the spring, just about now, and it's been delayed until October. And we also need to look at the impact of the government white paper on the future health and care priorities, and also need to support the long-term transformation and recovery of such. I would like to say that at some point we talk about the Marmot review, and in it's mentioned of the absence of the state support to deprived areas. Also regressive cuts that hits the most deprived communities, and we have a lot of those in Allerdale.
Thank you, Carly. Yes, I think that's. I think the next iteration, this pandemic working group needs to put those three items on the agenda and have a look and see what impact they have on us and what opportunities there might be there. And I'd ask that our officer Ian makes a note of that and make sure that they're on the next agenda for the the pandemic working group. Has anybody else got any comments or questions on the work of the pandemic task and finish group? It's certainly a task group. I don't see a finish in sight, but anyway, anybody else got anything they want to flag up for consideration or ask questions about? No, if not, we'll just note that oral update and go on to the next item on our agenda, which is the update report from the Budget Task and Finish Group, which I think is maybe quicker. Those members, and I'm not sure if there was anybody else apart from me who was currently present in the meeting, who was actually part of that Budget Task and Finish Group. I think there was. Just to recap, the first thing the Budget Task and Finish Group was got to grip with how a local authority budget actually gets put together. What's the process? What are the things you need to consider? How does a final budget emerge from the whole process? And along the way, the role of the Budget Task and Finish Group was not to decide whether it liked the budgetary ideas or didn't like the budgetary ideas, but just to satisfy itself that they've been put together in a robust and sound way. And certainly the first draft of the first draft budget had one big enormous gap between income and expenditure, and what the Budget Task and Finish Group was focused on, the processes by which SMT and others went through, reducing that gap and deciding what the final budget outcome was. And again, I said, while not everybody who was a member of the Budget Task and Finish Group would necessarily have come to the same conclusions as SMT and Executive did. You know, there are others who might have put a little bit more money there and a little bit less money somewhere else. But I think it's fair to say the Budget Task and Finish Group was satisfied that the process had been undertaken in a robust and sound way that got us to a balanced budget that actually makes sense, even if not all members would agree with every item in it. But it wasn't flawed in that sense, and the actual decision as to what's in the budget obviously is a matter for council when it receives a budget, and there's an opportunity for members to put forward alternatives. Although Overview and Scrutiny can do that, we didn't think we were in a position to put forward any specific amendments from the Overview and Scrutiny perspective, because it met our test of soundness and robustness. As I said, we weren't applying a political test to it. That's up to members in their political groups to put forward whatever their alternative proposals might be. So that's basically where we were with the Budget Task and Finish Group, and I think that the process has come to an end for this year, but we'll kick off again in 6 months' time. Happy to take comments and questions if there are any.
Chair, might I come in at that point? There was some discussion about the idea of there being an ongoing monitoring group as there used to be. Was that discussed with the Chief Executive? Do you want to?
Not specifically. No, that's. I think that's something that will emerge out of the continuing liaison between Audit Committee and Overview and Scrutiny Committee about who's doing what. It may well be there's a need for some other mechanism to be part of the process, but it's not clear to anybody yet what that mechanism actually might be. I was actually just reading in among the other papers I was looking at from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which produced that paper we looked at earlier, about their proposal for local public accounts committees, which I thought were absolutely fascinating, having watched Meg Hillier in the Public Accounts Committee in Westminster operating. Actually, a fascinating proposal. Don't know whether it's going anywhere at the moment, but that looked like a very interesting evolution of some aspects of audit and some aspects of overview and scrutiny. So where that might go over the next couple of years, I don't know. But it's likely there will be changes. But I think it's too soon to say. Yeah, the answer is to set up another group. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the answer just yet, but we'll see. Any other comments or questions on that? No? Okay, can we go to next item on the agenda, please? Which is the forward plan. The council's forward plan, pages 21 to 32 in your papers. Are there, what we're looking at this for particularly is to identify if there are any issues that we wish to put on our bring to our own attention, so to speak. The forward plan papers you've got actually started in January. We've passed some of we've done some of this stuff. We will need to go on to where are we? We've done. In fact, we get to page. We get to page 28 before we come to anything that hasn't already been done. So, the two items on page 28: the economic strategy to executive on the 21st of April, I believe, and on the same date, the revised climate change action plan.
Chair,
has that been changed?
So, Chair, the economic strategy and the working investment plan, according to a note from Democratic Services, has been moved to the 12th of May executive. The adoption of the revised, or the endorsement of the revised climate change action plan is currently due to go to the 21st of April meeting.
Right. Okay. Any? We're kind of aware of those, and they're on our continuing watch list. So
there are two new items for the April the 21st executive. They're also in this note. The hybrid mail, as in MAIL, procurement and new contract for regulatory services and built environment applications. I presume the hybrid mail and new contract for regulatory services is one item, and the built environment applications is another item.
I've no idea. I've no idea what hybrid mail and regulatory services means.
Yeah, can I come in?
Anybody help?
Yeah, can I come in, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's slightly different to what Ian mentioned. Hybrid mail procurement is an item, and the new contract for regulatory service and built environment applications is another. Hybrid mail's looking at the council's outgoing mail processes and whether it's can come up with any more cost-effective solutions.
Right, that's a largely technical issue. And the other one was what, Lee?
It is the new contract for the regulatory service and built environment applications, so the software used by those services.
Ah, right. So it's basically an IT contract.
Essentially.
Yeah, it's not about how we run building control or anything like that. It's right.
No, it's applications that they use and what they will be using in future.
Okay. Right. Councillor Granger.
Just a question of whereabout in the report is what you've just been talking about, please.
Those were updates following that, Malcolm. though following the publication of this report, those updates have been made.
Grand Lee, thank you. Spot on.
Right, last minute changes to the forward plan. Okay. Any others on anything on page 29? Page 30. Okay. Nothing jumps out of the forward plan as requiring our attention just at the moment, other than the watching brief we keep on a number of things. Can we take that as noted? And can we go on to the last item on our agenda, which is the Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme for the remainder of 2020-21. The first item there is about reports from representatives to other scrutiny bodies. The LEP Scrutiny Board, which obviously scrutinises the local enterprise partnership, the Crime Joint Committee, which scrutinises the Police and Crime Commission, the Health Scrutiny Committee, which scrutinises the Health and Wellbeing Board, and the Site Stakeholder Group, which scrutinises the NDAs, insofar as their operations take place in West Cumbria anyway. We've never actually, we were supposed to get these people along this time last year, and because of lockdown and so on, it never happened. So we've never done this before. I actually got these people along who are appointed by this council to sit on other scrutiny bodies. And the idea, if you like, is for us to scrutinise their scrutiny, to ensure that they are actually doing a proper scrutiny job wherever they are. So if they've been invited to the meeting on the 23rd of April, it just occurred to me that if we invite them along the 23rd of April and ask them what they're doing, we'll probably get what I did on my holidays kind of response. And if we ask them any awkward questions, they'll say, oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. I'll have to get back to you. Which effectively would be a waste of time for everybody, for us and for them. So what I've suggested, I've just drafted some questions. It didn't take long about it. You know, off the top of my head, some questions, which actually some of which I picked out of other Centre for Public Scrutiny documents about the sort of things we should be asking them. Just a suggestion, open to discussion, open to amendment. It doesn't have to be finalised today. We can, if people want to think about it and make suggestions how these questions could be changed or modified or altered or deleted or whatever, you know, we could do that. But I think probably by the end of next week we need to send out the invitation to present themselves on the 23rd of April to the 4 people involved. And I have no idea who those 4 people are. But these are the questions. Thank you, Ian. These are the questions. And for XXXX, please read either the Local Enterprise Partnership or the Police and Crime Commissioner or the Health and Wellbeing Board or the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. So the questions are very simple. How do you know whether it's effective in creating value? What's your information base to enable you to make these judgments? What happens if you decide you're not happy with its effectiveness or value? How do you gather views from this area on expectation and priorities and evaluate how effectively that body understands and responds to these? So basically, when you're going into these bodies, scrutinising those particular entities, representing the Averdale Council and therefore the people of Averdale, how do you know what expectations and priorities and so on they have in order that you can understand, work out how effectively that particular body understands and responds to them? And the 5th question is, how do we ensure that particular body allocates resources equitably and effectively to the benefit of this area amongst others? Which is, I suppose, a fancy way of saying, how do you make sure that Allerdale gets its fair whack out of, LEP spending or health and wellbeing spending or NDA spending or police spending, or whatever, to ensure that the resources are allocated equitably. So just 5 questions that I dreamt up, open for amendment, discussion, debate, rejection, or whatever. Do you want to look at them again, or should we just send them out and say, please, if you want to make any changes to these questions, or you want to make any amendments to them or add others, please respond by the middle of next week to Ian, if Ian sends them to Overview and Scrutiny members.
Yeah.
With that little bit of explanation about what we're trying to do. Any comments or questions?
No.
No, which reminds me, there is another thing that we'd forgotten. Many years ago, before I was a member, Overview and Scrutiny did a review of appointments to outside bodies. One of the things that was concluded was that once a year, Overview and Scrutiny should get a report from the people who were on outside bodies as to this, answering the same question as we're really asking the people who are on scrutiny bodies. Don't tell us what you've done, tell us what difference you've made. So, what value have you added to that outside body or to the area or whatever through your representation or through your appointment to that body by the council, so we can consider whether those representations and outside bodies are actually being effective and providing added value to the people of Allerdale. So a suggestion is, and I understand Gail is already trying, like pulling teeth, already trying to get members who've been appointed to various outside bodies to submit something to her. And all I'm suggesting is that for our next agenda, we have not reports not in person from the people, but we look at the stuff that Gail's been able to get from those people who are on outside bodies. And before anybody else, I confess, I haven't done my report yet for the outside body that I've been appointed to, but I will do that immediately. So I'm suggesting that that we also look at that, not in terms of personal representations, but look at the stuff on paper. Councillor Coburn.
Yeah, I did my report, but I must admit I thought it was for Gail. So apologies for perhaps it seeming a little, I don't know what, when you get to see it. Okay.
I'm sure Gail would allow you to revisit it if you really wanted to.
Hey, I've done it. I'm just going to stick with it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that point?
I've submitted mine to Gail.
Good man, Malcolm.
For the Cymru Foundations, the charitable foundation.
Good man.
They do a tremendous job.
So, Ian, can you liaise with Gail to see if we can have the compiled reports, such as they are, from those members appointed to outside bodies on as part of our papers for the April meeting?
I'm sure I can. I'm not quite clear within that. Were you saying that you would like a specific question to be asked, or are you?
No.
Right.
The specific questions for our appointments to the scrutiny, the various those 4 scrutiny joint committees. What we want to do with the outside body appointments is just simply look at the reports that have been submitted to Gail. And decide whether we want to do anything with them. But I think there needs to be, if we appoint people to outside bodies, there needs to be accountability.
So that will be a written report rather than appearing at the committee.
Yeah, purely we're not. It may prompt us to invite some people, but initially, no. Just a written report. We'll see.
All right, Mike.
Okay, I think that concludes the agenda. Provided that we'll note that I think, Ian, you were going to circulate members, all members of the council, asking for suggestions as to what they might want to see on the overview and scrutiny agenda for after the annual meeting when in the new council year. Have you done that, and have you had any responses?
No, I haven't as yet. I can do. I wasn't quite clear. Are we intending to discuss that in committee or as a separate workshop, perhaps before before the annual meeting, I guess?
What I was going to suggest was that we look at what we've got on the 23rd of April, and we decide at that point whether we need to go drumming up more interest, depending on the kind of responses that we get. And it may well be that a workshop, perhaps after the annual meeting in late May or early June, might be helpful. But let's see what we get through a first trawl, and look at what we've got on the 23rd of April and take it from there. Okay.
Yep.
Are there any other issues for the forward plan? If you have anything you think should be on the forward plan, please submit it to Ian so we can consider it. Sorry, on the work programme, please submit it to Ian so we can consider it for next time. Okay.
Well done, Michael.
If there's no other nothing else anyone wants to say, I would just thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for the officers who have been in attendance for their support and contributions, and the evidence we've been given from various people, including the leader of the council. And we'll see you on the in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 23rd of April. And in the meantime, have a good weekend and a happy Easter.
Thank you.